Freedom of Choice is the third album by new wave musicians Devo, released on May 16, 1980 on LP and July 7, 1987 on CD. It saw the band moving in more of an overt synthpop direction, even though guitars still played a prominent role. Forever Changes is the third album by the American rock band Love. It was released by Elektra Records in November 1967 and would be the final album by the original band, as subsequent albums featured leader Arthur Lee backed by a variety of new players. Exile on Main Street is a double album by English rock band The Rolling Stones. It was released on May 12, 1972 by Rolling Stones Records. The album's music incorporates rock and roll, blues, soul, country, and gospel genres. Evil Empire is the second studio album by American rap metal band Rage Against the Machine. It was released on April 16, 1996, almost 4 years after the band's self-titled debut album. Escape is the seventh studio album by American rock band Journey, released on July 31, 1981. It topped the American Billboard 200 chart and features 4 hit Billboard Hot 100 singles: So Don't Stop Believin', Who's Crying Now, Still They Ride and Open Arms, So plus rock radio staple Stone in Love. Electric Ladyland is the third and final studio album by English-American rock band The Jimi Hendrix Experience, released in October 1968 by Reprise Records. The double album was the only record from the band produced by Jimi Hendrix. Double Nickels on the Dime is the third studio album by American punk trio Minuteman, released on the Californian independent record label SST Records in 1984. A double album containing 45 songs, Double Nickels on the Dime combines elements of punk rock, funk, country, spoken word and jazz, and references a variety of themes, from the Vietnam War and racism in America, to working class experience and linguistics. Chicago is the second studio album by Chicago-based American rock band Chicago. It was released in 1970 after the band had shortened its name from the Chicago Transit Authority following the release of their same-titled debut album the previous year. Boston is the debut studio album by Boston-based American rock band Boston. Produced by Tom Scholz and John Boylan, the album was released on August 25, 1976 in the United States by Epic Records. Scholz had first begun playing music in the late 1960s after graduating from MIT with a master's degree, which led to a senior position at Polaroid. Born to Run is the third studio album by the American singer-songwriter Bruce Springsteen. It was released on August 25, 1975 through Columbia Records. Representing Springsteen's effort to break into the mainstream, Born to Run was a critical and commercial success. Blood on the Tracks is the 15th studio album by American singer-songwriter Bob Dylan, released on January 20, 1975 by Columbia Records. The album marked Dylan's return to Columbia Records after a 2-album stint with Asylum Records. Before and After Science is the 5th studio album by British musician Brian Eno. Produced by Eno and Red Davis, it was originally released by Polydor Records in December 1977. Guest musicians from the United Kingdom and Germany helped with the album, including members of Roxy Music, Free, Fairport Convention, Kin and Cluster. Back in Black is the 7th studio album by Australian rock band AC/DC. Produced by Robert John Mutt-Lange, the album was released on July 25, 1980 by Albert Productions and Atlantic Records. By the late 1970s, AC/DC began to achieve significant popularity outside their native Australia, with high-energy live performances and a string of successful albums. Astral Weeks is the second studio album by Northern Irish singer-songwriter Van Morrison, released in November 1968 on Warner Brothers Records. Widely acclaimed, it has had an enduring impact on both listeners and other musicians. Appetite for Destruction is the debut studio album by the American rock band Guns N' Roses, released on July 21, 1987 on Geffen Records. It was well received by critics and topped the Billboard 200 chart. Apostrophe is an album by Frank Zappa, his 18th, released on March 22, 1974 in both stereo and quadraphonic formats. An edited version of its lead-off track, Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, was Zappa's first chart single, reaching position 86. Are You Experienced is the debut studio album by the rock band The Jimi Hendrix Experience. Released in 1967, the LP was an immediate critical and commercial success. and it is widely regarded as one of the greatest debuts in the history of rock music. Electric Warrior is the sixth studio album by English glam rock act T-Rex. It was released on September 24, 1971 by record label Fly in the UK and Reprise in the US. The album marks a turning point in the band's sound, dispensing with the folk-oriented music of the group's previous albums and pioneering a new, glammier style of rock known as glam rock. Blind Faith is the self-titled and only studio album by the English supergroup Blind Faith, originally released in 1969 on Polydor Records in the United Kingdom and Europe and on Atlantic Records in the United States. 461 Ocean Boulevard is the second studio album by English musician Eric Clapton, released in July 1974 on the RSO label after the success of I Shot the Sheriff. The house featured on the album cover is 461 Ocean Boulevard in the town of Golden Beach, Florida near Miami, where Clapton lived while making the album. Jack Johnson, also known as A Tribute to Jack Johnson, is a soundtrack recorded by American jazz musician Miles Davis. The album was the second film score Davis had composed, after Ascensor por el Chefad in 1957. Jack Johnson, also known as A Tribute to Jack Johnson, is a soundtrack recorded by American jazz musician Miles Davis. The album was the second film score Davis had composed, after Ascensor por el Chefad in 1957. A Night at the Opera is the fourth studio album by the British rock band Queen, released in November 1975. Co-produced by Roy Thomas Baker and Queen, it was the most expensive album ever recorded at the time of its release. American Beauty is the sixth album by the rock band The Grateful Dead. It was recorded between August and September 1970 and originally released in November 1970 by Warner Brothers Records. The album continued the folk rock and country music explored on Workingman's Dead and prominently features the lyrics of Robert Hunter.